Our New Testament reading this morning is from Romans chapter 1, verses 19 and 20. It can be found in your Pew Bible on page 152. Paul writes, "For what can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. Ever since the creation of the world, his eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things he has made." This is the word of the Lord. Now, you may have heard that this morning we celebrated the blessing of the animals at the 8:30 service. And I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, but I can tell you that the AP&C did not tell me that I was going to be in charge of this service when they offered me the position. Come to find out that our Blessing of the Animals service is held on the first Sunday in May for a very particular reason. Tom is out of town. He's with the men at the Mo Ranch Men's Retreat this weekend, and so he weaseled his way out of it. But you know what they say, while the cat's away, the mice will play. And play we did this morning. It was a lot of fun. It was my first Blessing of the Animals service, so I wasn't quite sure what to expect. And it all went off without a hitch. I was a bit nervous, but you know, they say a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, and with one behind me now, I'm almost a pro. So it was good. There was only a little bit of hissing and a little bit of barking, but most of the animals really behaved. And everyone there had a good time. It was a little bit hairy, and we were all as giddy as goats. Now, I know that you're probably thinking, okay, that's enough. That's enough with the animal jokes. And I agree, but I couldn't help myself. So this morning, we're going to kind of continue that Blessing of the Animals service because if we're going to do it, let's do it. Let's do it right. And so that's what this morning's sermon is about. If you follow the lectionary readings, then you'll know that we are not using the lectionary readings this morning. But we do have much that we can learn about from the animals. Did you know that almost every culture uses stories about animals to teach children? Here in the United States, we have Aesop's fables, where we learn about the unlikely friendship between a lion and a mouse, even though what they have to offer each other isn't immediately apparent. Or how the hungry fox gets the crow to drop treasured cheese by wise words. Or we learn about the tortoise and how it beats the hare in a race, even though its competitor is much faster. In West Africa and the Caribbean, they tell stories of Anansi. Anansi is a spider who is very clever and uses trickery and cunning. He is the keeper of stories and all wisdom. And he uses his trickery to gain the upper hand on his powerful oppressors. The stories of Anansi are very important for that culture because they provide a model of behavior through which slaves could themselves gain the upper hand on their powerful oppressors. But they also did more than just inspire strategies of resistance. See, they also worked to connect the slaves with their African heritage. And they allowed them to establish a sense of continuity with their past and a means by which they could transform and assert their identities within the boundaries of captivity. Even the ancient city of Rome is said to have been dependent upon animals. The city is said to have been founded by two brothers, Romulus and Remus, who are taken by a jealous relative and abandoned in a forest, left to die there alone. But they don't die because a she-wolf finds them and nurses them. And when they're too old to nurse, a woodpecker comes and feeds them until they are finally adopted by a human family. The consensus is that without the help of animals, there would be no modern-day civilization. Now, all of the stories that I've told you about this morning attribute human characteristics to animals, which isn't always a good idea, because it can lead us to believe that instinctual behaviors of our mostly four-legged friends are guided by emotions that they may or may not have. And that has caused us to maim and kill many, many animals, even to the complete extinction of some. Those things being said, though, I cannot help but think that the authors and tellers of all of these tales found something desirable and altruistic in the animals themselves when their human counterparts were acting rather animalistic. Animals inspire us. They make us feel all sorts of things, really. Have you ever stood in a room full of teenage girls looking at pictures of baby animals on the internet? You can simultaneously hear, "Aww," in almost every pitch. Have you ever been hiking on a trail and out jumps a bear or a mountain lion or a coyote? I have. And I can tell you, I was scared out of my wits. And Jake can tell you that my own mama bear instinct kicked in, and I was getting him out of there. He will still not forgive me because he didn't even get to glimpse the fur of the bear. Animals are our companions on this earthly journey. We are connected to them, whether we like it or not. We curse them for eating the vegetables and flowers out of our gardens or chewing through the wiring in our attics. We love them for curling up next to us at night or being a welcoming friend when we come home from a long day's work. They make us laugh playing in the park, and we fear them walking a shadowy path late at night. We need them. We need them for food, to help with labor, and to provide for some of our most basic goods. We often take them for granted. We underestimate how many goods and services they provide us with. We can be very cruel to them, relocating them or withholding their food, polluting their homes, taking away their natural shelters, or requiring that they fight or participate in experiments for our own selfish gain. But no matter how we feel about animals, we rarely take the time to consider what Paul suggests in Romans 1:20, that ever since the creation of the world, God's power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things God has made. Sure, we can see God in a sunset or an ocean wave, a mountain or a pleasant stream, maybe even in the purr of a kitten or the adoring look of a puppy or the jumping of a dolphin out of the water. But do we also seek to understand God through a chicken's egg laid in the filth of an overcrowded hen house? Or a cow at an overgrazed pasture? Do we seek understanding of God in the deep, scary bark of a penned-up pit bull? Do we seek God in the rhythms of the squirrels and the locusts buried deep beneath the earth? Can we find God in the rats that seem to leave droppings everywhere we think we have prevented them from accessing? It's hard. It's hard to understand God's power and divine nature in all of the things that God has made. Do you know why we only have one blessing of the animal services each year? It's It's because it's hard. And frankly, it's a tad bit crazy. We don't know what's going to happen when everyone lines out there on Uri Plaza with their pets. Are the dogs going to chase the cats? Are the cats going to hiss and scratch the person doing the blessing? Whose line is the snake going to be in? And do I have to touch it? Will my allergies flare up and cause me to sneeze for the rest of the day? It can be a real mess. It's risky business to have a blessing of the animals service. But it also reminds us that all of the relationships we're in require risk. We have to risk that everything is going to go smoothly and it's going to be fun, or that one animal could throw off the delicate balance of female and a ruckus will ensue. But isn't that human nature too? Aren't we all just sitting in this delicate balance of relationships that have the ability to help us flourish or cause us to doubt our sanity? Couldn't everything be upset in a moment with a comment or an email taken out of context, a joke misheard, the opportunity to extend an invitation of friendship missed or misinterpreted? Ask the animals, and they will teach you. The birds of the air, and they will tell you. The plants of the earth, and they will teach you. And the fish of the sea will declare to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? Job says these words to his friends in the midst of a dispute. This is part of what he says to convince them that they are out of line, trying to think of a reason why God might be punishing him. Job says, relationships can be messy. They don't always go as planned. And sometimes they have an outcome that is good and that we like. And sometimes they just don't. It's all part of the risk that we take when we choose to be fully alive and in relationship with each other and even with God. Every creature knows this. Relationships, whether they involve nature or animals or people or God, require risk. And God necessarily created this world to be in relationship. Consider the adjustments that are necessary in our lives with the changing of the seasons or the spirit of nature. Consider the rhythms of the animals and their dependence upon the ebb and flow of life and rivers and green pastures and men and women who might care for them. Consider the risk that is required to build relationships of trust that matter, the give and the take. To know that we can't make it through this world on our own. To see our deeper selves. To know that not only are we accountable for ourselves, but we are connected and dependent upon all life for our well-being and for theirs. God even saw that we weren't very good at risk. Like Job's friends, we want there to be reasons and we want to assign blame, mostly to others, when things don't go our way. We protect what we consider to be ours. We don't want to ask someone new to lunch. We want to go with our usual group. It's hard for us to include people, especially when they're not like us. Let's be honest. A word of welcome is a heck of a lot easier than an honest effort to get to know someone new. And it's difficult. It's difficult for us to break out of our patterns of existence. We hate to admit that we depend upon others for our well-being, as if it takes something away from our own autonomy. But the good news is that God sees and understands how difficult it is for us to be in relationship, real relationship, and calls us to it anyway. Through the rhythms of nature, through the calls of the wild, through the breath of the companions with whom we share this earth. God calls us into relationship every day with each other, with the world, with nature, with all the creatures that God has made, and with God's very self. God requires that we depend upon one another. And God reminds us over and over again of this delicate balance of the earth's abundance, of the cycle of life and death, of flourishing and limits, of our connection to all that is, and this risky business of relationships. And God took the biggest risk of all. In the 13th century Christian mystic, Meister Eckhart wrote, "Apprehend God in all things, for God is in all things. Every single creature is full of God and is a book about God. Every creature is a word of God. If I spent enough time with the tiniest creature, even a caterpillar, I would never have to prepare another sermon. So full of God is every creature." Amen.